Achieving Financial Goals for Veterans. My name is Cindy Waldron. I'm the Vice President of Research and Analytics for Housing Solutions and Insights at Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac is a publicly traded company chartered by Congress to make homeownership and rental housing more accessible for affordable for Americans. We make mortgage capital available by purchasing mortgage loans from lenders so they in turn can provide more loans to qualified borrowers. Our mission is to provide liquidity, stability, and affordability to the U.S. housing market in all economic conditions, extends to all communities from coast to coast. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen unprecedented economic hardship for many, including veterans and military families who are struggling to make their rent or mortgage payments. Our partnership with Easter Seals provides financial education and awareness to obtain and sustain homeownership, along with the ability to make proactive and informed financial decisions for bringing clarity and confidence to help veterans and military families navigate financial decisions, challenges, and opportunities. Today, I am pleased to have Ramirez moderate today's session. Ramirez is Vice President of Strategic Communications and Marketing for Freddie Mac. She works with C-suite leadership to tell the company's story, promote corporate reputation, foster employee engagement, and drive cultural change. In addition, Ramirez also has been an executive sponsor for the Veterans Employee Group at Freddie Mac and is a military spouse. Ramirez, thank you for participating today. I'm really excited to have you and hear the panel discuss financial strategies to help veterans and military families. With that, I'll pass it over to you, Ramirez.
Thank you, Cindy. I am to be here with all of you. It's the day after Veterans Day. It's the day that we typically celebrate the tremendous service of our service members and of their families. As Cindy said, I am an Army wife, and my husband retired actually a couple of years ago. And so this program is very near and dear to my heart. We have a program that is constructed and dedicated specifically to cater to the housing related matters that are of particular interest to our veteran community. And there are many. So just to share a little bit about the flow of today's webinar, I will be asking our esteemed panelists some questions that we hear often at Freddie Mac, some frequently encountered questions. And in addition to that, there will be plenty of time for you all to ask your questions. And for that, you should look at the YouTube chat box, and that's where you would be entering them. And we'll make sure that we have time to get as many of those in as we possibly can. So let me introduce with great pleasure our experts, Tim Straud and David Ramirez. Tim is a Veteran Initiative Coordinator making a great impact with Easter Seals Greater Houston. Tim shares routinely financial and housing education information with veterans and veteran families and other military families. And so thrilled to have Tim on the panel today. Tim.
Thrilled to be here. Happy birthday week to all my devil dogs, and happy Veterans Day to all of those who have served. It's going to be a great event. Buckle up. It's going to be some fun. And if you are not ready, I'm going to give you a verbal dose of caffeine with some great information.
And I'm sure that you will, Tim. And David Ramirez is the Homeownership and Credit Program Manager with Soldier On. Soldier On is a nonprofit organization providing homeless veterans with transitional housing and other supportive services. Soldier On actually collaborates with Freddie Mac to provide financial education to the community using our Freddie Mac Credit Smart curriculum. So David, with that, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all that serve and continue to serve. It's a pleasure. We're going to have a great event, and Tim, I need some of that caffeine, so thank you. It's always a pleasure working with you, so I'm glad to be part of this event.
All right, let's get started, shall we? So first with some level setting. veterans and their families often face unique situations while in service. PCS every 3 years, starting over, new schools, new doctors, new community. Tell us, Tim, about how military life impacts a veteran's housing experience in a way that is perhaps unique than other parts of the population.
Laura, you know, as a military spouse and a family member, that serving in the military has its rewards, but it also comes at a cost. And sometimes that is time that you're taking away from your family. And the reciprocal of that, the other side of that coin, is that you get tons of benefits, which are absolutely amazing. And we're going to talk about some acronyms today, like BAH, basic allowance for housing, BAH, and COLA, cost allowance for living, and some amazing things that you get along your journey in the military. But it's really difficult on some of our family members. And I breathe a sigh of relief because when I see my transitioning veterans, I just welcome them with open arms because I know firsthand what they've gone through. You've moved to after boot camp and AIT, if you were in the Army, you go to your first duty station, you're like, yes, and you set up shop. And if you're not living on post, you get your basic allowance for housing, and you go off post and you find a place to either purchase or to rent for the next 2 to 3 years, depending on your branch of service, your MOS, and your specialty, and how long you're going to be in that area. And say you start to have kids and you're doing all the right things and you're supporting your spouse. Sometimes you're the female spouse, sometimes you're the male spouse, or sometimes there's both of them serving together and you are being a great family unit of doing those things. But say one spouse is in the military, typically that's the way it happens, and the other spouse is a teacher. Say it's a female Marine and she is doing everything great. She's at Lejeune and she gets stationed at another place. Her husband is an English teacher and he has all these amazing awards. Everybody wants to be in Mr. Johnson's English class. I mean, they just love this guy. He brings all the fun and all the facts there. He dresses up from time to time. A little weird for high school, but people love him. And they decide to transition, and they going to do a slice element over in El Paso with the Army. Well,
then what?
Not a lot of Marines there. And so they send him over there. And what about the spouse? She can't teach English there. They need Spanish teachers. And I'm belaboring this point, but it's so important because now we really need to work with our spouses on their finances, their vocations, their portable job careers as they transition out, because 9 times out of 10, it's the military spouse that's handling the finances. And she or he really need to know specifically what benefits are available to them, not only from Easter Seals, Freddie Mac, Soldier On, the VA, and thousands of others that we're going to plug them into resources today.
Thank you for that background. I mean, clearly you have lived and breathed this experience, and I'm really glad that you bring up that point about the spouses, because often, you know, in this day and age when it takes two incomes to make ends meet, it's really difficult. The military lifestyle, constantly moving around, it's difficult for the spouse to hold a stable career and build wealth that way. So I think the military families have a particularly unique need when it comes to wealth creation, wealth building, and hence housing is inextricably tied to that. David, let's dig a little bit deeper on this issue. Given the unique experiences of veterans, can you help our listeners understand how it is that homelessness has become such an acute issue in the veteran community?
Great question. And Tim, thank you for your insight. I think I'm going to echo a lot of your statements in talking about a transition, you know, from my perspective and working with veterans who are homeless every day. So one of the things for any veteran community, to answer your question, that, you know, it's alarming. This is a battle that we continually fight for years already. And one of the things that we know with our veterans is that it's the journey home, making that transition. of a country that they protected, served, and defended. So when we talk about what challenges are those when you're departing from the services, well, the first thing is, adapting. Tim said something, the husband's always away from home. They work long hours, abnormal hours, things that are not normal to, when in the civilian world. Coming back to adjusting on that and maybe being away from home for months at a time, that's an adjustment itself. So imagine retiring and embarking into the civilian world. That's one of the adjustments. Now, the other key thing with the challenges, for us and that we're aware as a veteran community is that, you have to find out where you're going to live. In the military, you always had shelter, clothing, and food. So that's another thing that you're like, wow, they don't provide that for me anymore. And, there's things that start to occur, lack of education on savings and budgeting, as Tim, conveyed. The finances may be controlled by the wife back home who's, trying to figure it out in the household, having kids go to school while their husband's away. So there's plenty of challenges, but now we're going into the real world where you have to make medical bills now. When I was in the military, all my medical was paid for. So think about all that stress that starts piling and piling. And the most important thing with the challenges of going into the civilian world for any military member getting out, and that I speak with veterans that are homeless, is they're not aware that they have a physical disability related to the service. And this might not occur for years later. Mm-hmm. And so you imagine one of the things that's always troubling me when I think about the people, the veterans or civilians that are homeless, it upsets me to think that, so many, a troubling rate of 20 veterans are committing suicide. And if finances or their housing situation was one of those factors why they did that, that's very upsetting to me from a veteran community. So my message here is we have the ability of forums like today to promote awareness about all these great resources that our veterans, not only veterans, but civilians can gain so we can prevent this ongoing battle that we see. So, again, we have right now with this forum, share the resources that we get after this, and have a conversation. There's nothing taboo in talking about finances or things like that. So if you want to be part of that proactive approach, talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David, for sharing that. It is heartbreaking, and nobody knows that better than you. And we have to do better. We have to do better on this front. Talking about hardship, COVID, nobody ever imagined that it would pan out the way it has. So much hardship that Cindy mentioned at the top of the hour. Tim, can you talk a little bit about what you are seeing out there in the work that you do with Easter Seals in the greater Houston area, trends, what stories you're hearing? If you can share a little bit of that, sort of what it looks like.
Absolutely. And first, let me make sure that is about 6 feet right there. Now it's safe. I say that in kidding because in the military, we laugh about things that people in the civilian world be like, did he really laugh about that? Yeah, that stuff was funny. But with COVID, I know it's serious. From a former combat medic standpoint, it's transmitted very similar to the flu when you have a virus that gets inside and turns your own body against you. And that's not the big issue. I mean, that's part of it. The other part is the fear that we're living in. It has changed the way that we live, and more germane to the housing market, it has changed the way that the economy rises and falls. I wish some of you that are on this call right now could have seen what we were talking about in the green room before everything started. We're talking about World War I veterans and World War II, the greatest generation. And David was remarking on, man, it'd be great to record more of those stories from the men and women that served, because when they came back from those deployments, within 3 years, millions of homes popped right out of the ground. I mean, there weren't those many realtors as there were back then. In the city of Houston, there are over 30,000 licensed realtors. And you're like, holy smokes, that's a lot, because the housing market is just booming. Well, go back then, it was just so much simpler to purchase a home. And let's address the issues without mudding the waters. It was easier for some people to get certain loans for housing than it was others. Thankfully, as a nation, we have taken great strides to making sure that everybody, every American and all of our immigrants are able to purchase great homes. Back to our veterans, we want to make sure that they're utilizing the benefits that they have. But with COVID, the great thing about it, our elected leaders did come together with the CARES Act to make sure there were certain resources that are there. I'll talk a little bit more as we dive in deeper, but one of the options that is there for our veterans is forbearance. And I've had 3 veterans that right after COVID started lost their jobs. 2 in oil, 1 in gas. And these guys were making upwards of $200,000 a year. You're like, $200,000. What problems do they have? More money, more problems. It's usually it's a principle that we live in the United States, and it's indicative of other countries, but more so with the United States. You start here, and here's your salary, whoop, and you're like, oh, I get a little raise. I'm gonna spend a little bit more. It's called Parkinson's principle. And you make a little bit more, you spend a little bit more. It's kind of like your time as well. And we are not good stewards of either of those from time to time. So a little bit of planning goes a long way. But one of the gentlemen that came to us, he simply did not have the budget in place. He bought more toys and tools than he did resources that would help him out. I can tell you right now, in a down economy, you can't eat bricks. And so even though he had a large portion of his house paid off, he couldn't take a loan against it. He didn't have a job. His wife was a stay-at-home mom. She was raising their 3 kids, doing a great job. And now she took a part-time job while he was looking as well. And they really pulled down on their finances. And it had a paradigm shift with their family, a lot of stress. That's where the other part of Easter Seals comes in. We get certain financing to help our veterans go through the mental health counseling and their family members. So anybody who's designated by them as a family member, we're able to talk in confidence and help them through, as well do the financial planning and the housing financial support, because some they get from the government, others is through the community. And we're going to share a few of those resources with everybody today, Lori.
Great, thank you. And speaking of resources, if someone is living sort of on that edge, right? For example, I have a good friend. He's a defense contractor. He's a veteran, now a defense contractor. His day job is actually in a SCIF, but because of COVID, he can't actually go in. So he really can't telework. Their children are stuck at home, no school. Somebody's got to take care of them. And so he's been furloughed. And he's concerned about becoming one of those homeless veterans. David, what resources could you point my friend to, or someone in their position?
Yes, that's a great question. There's plenty of resources for veterans, even civilians alike. And one of the things I would tell anyone, first of all, what I see with a lot of our veterans, I'll tell you, they want to validate a lot of information. And, it's hard for them to find a trusted resource. So we have everything at the palm of our fingertips, right? And you can utilize your phone, your BlackBerry, whatever it is, and educate yourself. That's the key thing. And one of the things that, working with Freddie Mac, My Home, that's a great resource when you want to try to find the trusted partnerships. And one of the things that I always tell everybody with my experience with working with veterans and civilians alike, find someone who's HUD certified, a nonprofit agency. And Tim will tell you, and everybody on this call will tell you, if somebody's asking you for money to reconcile your situation, that's a red flag right there. So do not give any money out. So that should always be a red flag. But again, educate yourself, use a lot of resources that we'll be giving out today. Make sure it's a nonprofit entity, but really specifically with veterans, I wanted to convey this. There are, my group is out of Massachusetts, and we serve four states in the United States. And so that being said, there is a thing called SSVF, Support Services for Veterans and Families. And that's really a key thing that every veteran should know. No matter what stage in your life you're at, know about SSVF. Look on Google, see what local state entity that accepts those funds, because they're able to provide resources like we do at Soldier On, where we provide counseling, budget, how to budget. Maybe you're anticipating a foreclosure, but we get those SSVF funding that in other situations, we may have a veteran that going through an eviction, a rental eviction. SSVF funds will help support that, that situation for the veteran.
And that's fantastic. And these resources, we'll try to get those out in your chat function, as you see in front of on your screens. Help us, if you would, David, unpack some of the sort of mortgage industry jargon that people might run into in the process of talking with a counselor, or even calling their lender to say, hey, I'm kind of in financial distress. I can't pay my mortgage. I've been hearing things like forbearance, loan forgiveness. I mean, what are these things? Can you unpack any of that for us?
That is a great question. I can definitely do that. So again, I like to keep things simple. All right. And what I mean by that is that we have to have a conversation that may be taboo for a lot of people. They don't like talking about finances. So when we start talking about jargon and things like that, I just want to understand the situation. And what I try to do with our veterans specifically, again, there's a lot of HUD certified nonprofits that could assist anybody in a situation like this, but you're going to an expert who is not working for the lender. So again, seek those resources that have SSVF or HUD certified that could help you, through those situations like a foreclosure, and to understand that jargon. And again, they're the mediator. They're going to help you, and it's at no cost. And again, it helps you educate you. One of the things that I would see in my experience, and I wanted to point this out because, when somebody's dealing with a lot of this financial hardship, the walls are coming down. Imagine all the stress. And we don't want, nobody wants to know that you're 6 months behind on your mortgage, or that you're suffering with your budget. We all want to paint a picture. There's a lot of pride that goes into it. But the more you ignore it, the problem continues. So again, talk to somebody, and don't talk to somebody in your circle. That's why we have these nonprofit agencies where you could talk to somebody that could help you and guide you. So that would be my response for that.
One more follow-up for you, David. What about renters? We talked a lot about homeowners in distress who can't pay the mortgage, but renters, are there resources out there for them?
Yes, great question. And I would say the same thing, just like homeowners. The more you understand who owns the apartment building is going to be the best way to handle the situation, because you got to get that information, right? And then second, whether you're a civilian or a veteran, if you're going to services that cost money, don't do it. All right. So again, educate yourself. Great resources that we'll share after, online, like my home with Freddie Mac. You could go HUD.gov. Go to Easter Seals. That's a starting point. Any entity that is not going to charge you a penny, start there, and it gives you the valid information. Now, the other thing with for the renters, just same thing. I will convey this again, SSVF. Just Google it, who in your state will accept that, because if you're facing an eviction, a renter, you're going through this, there's a lot of programs due to COVID-19 that are going to help assist, with rent payment assistance. And, other things like that we could help our veterans with is that, remember, this causes a lot of stress, not only for you, but the family, but there's also services for counseling that they may need at the time for a time like this. Maybe SSVF there's other opportunities where with COVID right now, we may need to change our way that we're looking at things. It might be a job change. SSVF entities could help you with that, look for a new job, and even also file for a VA claim.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to pivot from the pandemic for a moment.
But I want to dovetail on what David said, if that's okay, Lori.
Absolutely.
So David was talking about some very important things about budgeting and what's coming in and what's going out, and maybe doing a shift yourself and figuring out a different vocation. And this is where the fun stuff comes in. This is where you get to use your imagination and your perseverance that you had in the military. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? I've got buddies of mine that have started drone businesses, and these guys were great at playing video games. And I got two of them now. One's He's got his FAA license, and he's doing some great. He's making thousands of dollars per week of working with different realtors and taking pictures and videos and stuff like that. And the other guy's teaching the classes, stuff that didn't exist a couple of years ago. And I'm absolutely loving that. I just got off a call with the SBA. So there's additional resources to bring in a side gig, even if you don't need it now. And one of the things that my grandfather taught me, and hopefully you had one of these as well, and he said, dig the well before you're thirsty. That means figure out what your passion is, what you want to do and put in. And with those budgets, there are some scary things there if you don't address them. Like forbearance, what Laura and David were talking about, it's where the U.S. government has stepped in through the CARES Act, and they put billions of dollars into this, especially, and a lot of it was curtailed to help out veterans. And it simply states that for the first 180 days, you can restructure your loan. That doesn't mean you don't have to pay it back. Nah, Uncle Sam's got me. No, he's helping you out. But what's going to happen is you got to connect with your mortgage person. Dig the well before you're thirsty? Know your mortgage person. You don't want to call them like David said, 5 months behind, 6 months behind. No, structure it early. And it doesn't mean it's automatically going to go to the back end of that loan. And your traditional loans are 30-year and 15-year, no matter if you're using Freddie Mac, VA, FHA, or traditional. You do have options, but guess what? You have to know which route is going to be best for you after talking to one of those professionals. And so there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train, but you do have to seek out that light. Laura?
Hey, Tim, can I say something on that now? You bring up a great point, and I'm going to go back on just, I was working the mortgage industry for over 17 years on a national level, working with civilians across the nation during financial hardships. And the reason I say this is that you bring up a good point. Start having those conversations with the lender. Most people have this stigma or myth that they're out to get my home. They don't want your home. You know, they're there servicing your loan. That's the last thing they want to do is put you out on the street. So have that conversation, get with their default team, modification team, and view your options. And again, you know, the services that we're providing today, like with Easter Seals, you could review those options with Easter Seals before you call back your lender and tell them what they convey to you. You know, we're here to help and assist. So I want to you bring up a great point. The more you ignore it, the bigger the problem gets.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a great time to, if you've been diligent with your finances, to be poised for things, because what's going to happen now, it's kind of like a tornado. I grew up in Missouri, and it's just bear with me. And so when the warm, humid air collides with the cold, dry air, that dense cold air is pushed over the warm air, that warm air goes up. And then when it comes up like that, that's when that tornado happens. Well, I'm giving you that analogy because it has already started. The COVID pandemic is the warm air rising. The real damage is when it touches the ground. We're getting to the end of the first round of forbearance, and what's going to happen, people don't know. Now, you don't have to pay it all in a lump sum when that's over, but people are going to quickly realize we don't have the resources to stay in this home if they had purchased it. So what's going to happen? And pardon me, look at the housing market as well. When everything happened in March and April, when everything was really moving forward with the pandemic, there were no new houses being built. So basically new construction came to a screeching halt. The people that were looking at relocating be like, Sally, I think we're going to stay. Frank, I think we will. And so they stayed in their homes, and it was not on the market. And this is simply broken down to its basic concepts: supply versus demand. So supply went down, so the demand went up, and they could charge more. So the Fed stepped in and says, hey, I think we'll help out just a little bit, lower the interest rate. Great for those who are poised to take advantage of it. Less than 3%? Are you kidding me? 2.75? Heck yeah, let's go buy something if you're ready. And I think that's what Laura was getting to.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to shift from the pandemic to the journey to homeownership. Tim, can you touch briefly, like you started, on the various VA and non-VA financing options for somebody who wants to embark on that journey?
Oh, yes. Well, let's talk first about the VA, because it's one of the great loans that are out there. So there's no down payment for those who qualify for it. There's no low settlement costs. It, like we're just talking about, very competitive below market interest rates, no mortgage interest, and it's not really too difficult to get one if you've served honorably and you transition out. And I say that because there's not a credit score from the VA that you have to have, but you do need to qualify with a mortgage lender, whether it's a whatever route that you take. Somebody's going to back that, and you do have to have a certain credit score. It's fluctuated this year due to COVID, so make sure that you're talking to an industry professional in your area. Now you can use the fancy schmancy apps, and I'm not going to name any of them today, but there are ones that that you can use for 1%. The traditional real estate model is where it's currently at in 2020. They charge 3%. I know some charging 4%, and that's kind of crazy, but they're getting 3% for finding you the right home, helping you get in connection with the financing. And the other part of it is the mortgage person. If you're going with a traditional mortgage lender, they're going to make that the person who sells that loan or secures it for you, they're going to make 1%. And the reason I'm telling you this, follow the money. You're paying somebody to help you in that process. You need to make sure that industry professional is just that. Somebody who just passed the state exam to be a realtor, or they've got their mortgage license, may not be the best fit for you. If they're hungry and they're paired in a mentor-mentee program, absolutely, I say step on that skinny pedal on the right-hand side of that car and move forward with quickness. But if they don't have industry knowledge, don't get into a 15 or 30-year mistake, because if just because you qualify for a loan doesn't mean that you should get that loan. Let's talk about that. That doesn't mean that I'm saying, hey, tap the brakes. I'm saying it's amazing what you learn from Vanilla Ice. He said, stop, collaborate, and listen. So talk to your industry professionals. Get them in a room together. Do a Zoom call with the title person, the insurance person, the realtor, the mortgage, and say, hey, look, here's what I want. I'm looking for a home. I'm looking for this area. It's Sally and Frank. They have 2 kids. They've got 1 on the way. They're looking for the right school system, and they want to stay near their job. They don't want to go through too much traffic, and they want an area with low crime. They're going to check the dog watch places, make sure that there are no creepers around that have registered in their neighborhood. So they're doing all the right things, and then they're going to look at that all important budget. And when we sit down with them, we start with the basics right here. Let's get that personal budget there, and then take it up one. We're going to look at 50, 30, 20. 100% of all their bills, guess what? Should fit in that 50%. People are like, what? Oh, yes, that 2-income family should be able to live on half their budget. Now, that's for all of the real bills. That 30%, guess what? That's all the fun stuff that you think that you really want to do. That's eating out. That's going to Uber Eats instead of cooking biscuits in the oven. Who doesn't like biscuits and gravy, right? And so instead of cooking at home, you're like, I'm going out for it. Well, you can do it as long as it's in your budget. It's line item. That 20%, that's paying down your debt and investing and making sure that you have insurance. If you follow those guidelines, and those are industry wide and not just specific to Easter seals. Once you fit into those, then take that step forward and let's look at some financing options. Could be the VA, could be FHA, could be Freddie Mac, could be a different system that you have out there. But guess what? You may not qualify for any of those, but you're going to need a cosigner. Just like on a car, you can get a cosigner on a house. Be careful, because if you're not married to that person or you're not blood related, guess what? Once you sign on that dotted line, you have a 30-year agreement with those people, whoever you sign with. I just sold my house in March, right when COVID was hitting, and I kind of saw my crystal ball what was going on, and I got a smoking hot deal on my house, and I sold it for a great profit. The family that purchased it had some financial issues. They went from 2 to 3. They had 4 people on that contract. But guess what? They made it work. It's a nice sized house. So if you don't qualify by yourself, guess what? You may be able to do that. Remember though, that these are the same people you're going to share your kitchen and your bathroom with for the next decade, at least, figuring all that out. But my challenge to you is you do your homework. The purpose for me of being here is to light that fire under you. You can be somebody who owns a house. If you served in the military, especially if you live in Texas, you should own a piece of Texas. You can go with the Veterans Land Board and choose land that's not up for grabs from anybody else. You got to have a little of this, or you have to have great credit. And now David's going to echo everything that I'm talking about, because you need to protect your credit like it's a football. And if you've never played football, just imagine you went to the refrigerator and you grab a dozen eggs. You better protect those eggs, because when you crack one of those eggs, guess what happens? That's your credit score going south very quickly. And the quickest way to ruin your credit is by not paying attention, without using your smartphones and checking your credit. Just about every app, doesn't mean if you go to a traditional bank or a credit union, they're going to monitor your credit score. If you miss any payments whatsoever on a structured loan, guess what? Drop. So you have to stay on top of that. And this is muy importante. If you have a spouse or family members that they have multiple incomes in your house or in your purview, make sure you're having those good conversations. The last thing you want to hear from your spouse at Christmas is from the spouse that, hey, I think we're going to go to grandma's house, over the mountain and through the woods. And you're like, no, I charged up. Remember those Jimmy Choo shoes that I really wanted? Those were $350. What? You spent $350 on a pair of shoes that you've never worn because we don't go out during COVID? I wanted to feel pretty. And so that's great. Who doesn't want to feel pretty? But at the same time, goes back to that budget. Is it in there? And are you monitoring what's going on? Doesn't mean that you have to have delayed gratification on everything in your life. It's that we can be so excited about moving into your home and doing those right things. Kind of got off on a tangent, Lord, going back to the basics on the finances. Did I answer your question?
Well, what I'm hearing from you is you got to do your research.
Yeah.
And so my question is should everybody be jumping into the pool? I mean, we can buy low interest rates, can buy more house, right? Is it for everyone?
Yes and no. And so it's just saying one size fits most. Why are you buying? If you're buying because you're going to be in that home for at least another 10 years and you're going to take advantage of those great rates, and you sat down, looked at your family budget, talked to a professional, absolutely take steps forward and do it and have a blast with it. But if you're looking at as an investment right now, I say tap the brakes on it, because I'm not sure what the market is going to do in the next 6 months. Proceed with caution. If you get that amazing deal on a piece of property, land, building, both of them together, take a good look at it, talk to another professional and go through it. But I'm hesitant of people just going out and getting too much house because the rates are lower right now. We saw what happened in 2002, 2007, 2008, when everybody could get a loan. The no doc loans. And for those who aren't aware, there were loans. All you did is go in, sign your name. You didn't have to prove anything. They would just charge half a point or a point higher and say,
I think you had to prove you had a heartbeat. That's all.
You're exactly right. And what happened to the housing market? It shifted. It dropped. It was the lowest ever. People lost their homes, their jobs.
Which is exactly where I was going. So, Tim, I just want to make sure that, at Freddie Mac, of course, we're here to support homeownership in the country, but we want people in homes that they can afford and that they can keep, and because it's not good for anybody if that's not sustainable. And nobody knows this better than David. So, David, anything you want to add to the conversation around whether it's for?
Yes, I would just like to add this, Tim. Great job. You put a lot of insight and perspective of what's going out there in the real world. One of the things that I heard from you is do your homework. You talked about real estate agent, and I thought that light bulb went on. But I had the experience as a real estate agent myself for quite a few years, but working with young professionals that get into it, and they really don't advocate for their client. And I hear stories where they're working with a lender and they get an incentive just because they're trying to sell them a certain model that's been sitting there for, maybe 2 months or so. So yeah, again, somebody's got to be advocating for you. And if you don't feel that, then discontinue the relationship. That's what I would say. Another thing you spoke about that we teach our veterans time and time again, and not just our veterans, our young youth, needs versus want. That's a key thing. What troubles me today, and what I do, in my own personal time, and Tim had echoed this, if you can have conversations with your family, do it. And really, our youth don't really understand how much a mortgage payment is today. You could ask a 15-year-old, they'll think like it's $2,800. It's scary to think that they're going to be in the real world in 3 years, and they don't have no sense of how the real world works. And that's the reality we live in. So, I'm just echoing some of those statements. Make sure that we continue to educate the others, anybody possible, and talk about a budget, talk about finances. It's not taboo. Tim also said something else that I wanted just to echo, and I know we're going to the last of the hour with this, but one of the challenges that I forgot to talk about in transitioning is applying your military experience to the real world. A lot of our veterans have a hard time with that. And it sometimes could get discouraging, but they need to understand that, look, you picked up, even though you were an infantryman and you come out in the real world, you have leadership, you manage people. And those are the things they need to remember, what great things they did for our country. And when they come home, there are opportunities there. And we have those resources for them, such as Easter Seals, Soldier On, Freddie Mac, that's continuing educating. The other thing I wanted to talk about when we're talking about refinancing and the low interest rates, this is one thing that I've seen a lot. And Tim, you said, right, it's a yes and no, right? What is the situation for the home? Right, and meaning the home, are you a young family? Were you going to be there for 10 years? We got to talk about these things. And if you don't have a person, a realtor, or somebody who's looking, or somebody's looking over your finances, asking these questions, then they're not advocating for you. So remember, what are your goals? At the end, I have veterans that come up to me like, oh, these rates are dropping and I want to refi. Well, when did you get your home? 2 years ago. You want to refi and reset the terms? You're going to be losing money, even though you're going to be, are you really saving money? The last 2 years, I guess you threw your money away, because now they're going to give you closing costs and things like that. So stop and think and read the numbers. And if you need help with that, call us. There's plenty of resources out there. So I'll end with that. Look at your situation, the goals, where you're going to be at, and every situation is always going to be different.
David, you're talking about the purchase of homes and Colton like that. One of the things with a lot of veterans, as we get into an aging group of veterans from Vietnam, Korea, World War II, they need modification on their homes to make sure that the driveway has a ramp so they can get up and down. The doors are widened inside and out to take care of these. The VA has benefits there, whether you got a VA loan or not. Those benefits are available. There's tons of resources that we have connected through Easter Seals for local. And the best thing you can do, simply Google it wherever you're watching this right now. There are tons of resources listed. They may be connected to your local VFW, your American Legion, your Disabled American Veteran chapter, or it could be through your city that has a local veterans chapter that's under the city heading that can direct you to grants to get that stuff done. Just because you saved up all your pennies doesn't mean you have to spend them all. You have a grateful nation that wants to thank you for your service. It's not charity. They have the funds there. Before you spend it, just check to see if it's there.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's several resources are out. Many resources are out there, and it's a matter of doing the research again. I want to remind folks who are listening to go ahead and pop in any questions that you might have into that YouTube chat. We'll work them into the conversation. And in the meantime, Tim, I want to ask you about something that I think is very important as well. When there are times of crisis that we're in, back to COVID, can't help it. We also see a rise in scams, and we don't want any of our listeners or anyone, frankly, getting caught up in a scam. Can you share a little bit about the resources available to protect their credit, what people should be watching out for in avoiding scams? We've already mentioned anytime somebody wants to take your money, that's a red flag. But tell us more about that.
I was actually talking to a veteran, an older veteran, at an event yesterday right outside of Houston. We're blessed to have some smaller communities in the suburbs that still have their Veterans Day COVID conditions all around, making sure that they were safe. And he came up to me and he said, "Tim, I never thought it would happen to me." And he and his wife had talked about finances and everything that was going on. They too felt the pinch during the last 7 to 8 months. And his wife got a call, and she's an educated woman. She used to be a school teacher, and she got the call from a scammer. And he simply said, I'm not sure if you're aware, but all of our veterans are getting an additional $1,600 for COVID relief. All I need to do is get your information. Well, my husband said I'm not supposed to give it over the phone. Ma'am, that's okay. I totally understand. But if we'll mail the check out, but we're going to put you, there's 5 tiers. And she was telling me this and she's crying. My heart went out to her. And she said, she's like, "Tim," he said there were 5 tiers. And they would simply put us at the 5th tier. If they didn't run out of money, they would circle back to us. But if she changed her mind, let us know and we can put her back on there. And she made a snap decision, and fear, FOMO, fear of missing out, right? And so he used that fear and he got her, and he got her account information, and they drained the bank. And working with it's a credit union, I'm sorry, working with the credit union now to make sure that those funds are still secure. And those are the things just watch out for. If somebody calls you or contacts you, email, or they send you something in the mail about something or COVID assistance or something from the government, and that it doesn't pass the smell test, feels a little fishy, look it up, Google it, go back to what David was talking about. Know your realtor, know your finance person, and contact them, or contact one of our agencies, and we'll help you with that research to make sure that you're not taken advantage of. And there are some other products that are out there that some people can really use, and they're not scams. It's just that you need to be wary of what they are. There are some famous people, after they're done making movies and TV shows, they come on and they hawk different products online. And one of them is for a reverse mortgage. Now, it's not taboo and it's legal to do that, but you have to be careful to see if that is right for you. I have a World War II veteran. He's just turned 95 years old this year, and we helped him out with $45,000 worth of renovations to his home. He got scammed after Hurricane Harvey, paid them all of his money to repair the hole in his roof and do everything. They took the money and ran. So we fixed his roof, we did everything. And my spider sense went off. And I said, something's not exactly right here. Great guy, worked directly as an attaché for General Patton, just an amazing patriot or an amazing veteran. And his family are patriots. And we went and we started asking the question behind the question, what about this? What about this? Well, somebody came to him with that reverse mortgage, and that's exactly what he's been doing. And this is his second wife, and she doesn't speak a lot of English, and she has no idea that when he passes, she has to move out because it's no longer their house. And the way it's structured is that when he shuffles on, that the house becomes somebody else's. And there are laws to protect, and so we're working through that. What I'm saying is that be careful of anything that you do with that step. If You don't have to have a degree in finances, but you just simply have to ask the right questions and make sure it's there, because you served our country. You don't have to be an expert at everything, but there are tons of resources and great people that really want to help you.
David, do you have anything to add to the scam issue?
I'll just, talking about what Tim had just said, going back to the '08 crisis, when I used to work for a mortgage company, one of the continuous calls that we got were people in foreclosure and just got like a sheriff's cell. 10 days, they got to be out.
Oh.
And they're working with other entities who'd misled them and taken a fee of representing them for modification. So when things like this occur, just like the crisis in '08 with the housing market, bad occurs. There people see a great opportunity to take advantage, and most of the ones that we interacted were, I'll just be honest, may had an issue with the way they speak, maybe Hispanic and had trouble communicating, and or they could be elders. Those were like the main ones. They would just, the predators would go and call, and it would be a very difficult situation. So one of the things that I would put out there is that we work closely with CFPB. File those complaints. If you hear of entities like that, go research, like Tim had said. Go online. I never heard of the Tim and David firm that's going to give us this great modification. But seriously, look for the reviews. I mean, there's a lot of credible references there, and educate yourself, because if you're not having those conversations directly with your lender, that's the first mistake. Let them know what's going on. I'm about to lose my job. And they may be able to, they want to work out something with you. There's special forbearances that we saw back in '08 due to, what was going on, where people were losing their jobs as well. And they gave them a forbearance for 6 months. Now, every lender is going to react differently. And they have people internally that are going to make those underwriting decisions, the best decisions to keep you in your home. So that's what I would convey. I never like having the conversations, the banks are bad people. They're not in the real estate business, and they want to work a resolution, but we have to have a conversation.
Thank you for that. Looks like we have a quiet group. No questions have come in. I think I'll probably wrap up with one of my own to finish it up. I've certainly learned a ton during this session. I thank you both, Tim and David, for all the information that you have shared. And here's the one I'd like to end up with. In 5 words or less, what's the most important thing for homeowners and renters to know at this time? Tim.
I actually wrote this down before because I knew you were going to do this, and I forgot what my 5 words were. But I was going to, on the fly, I can say, have fun, research, communicate.
There you go. David?
I remember, I think I would say, and you heard the theme throughout the whole call, knowledge is power, educate yourself.
And speaking of education, we have some other resources, such as the National Resource Directory. I think it's nrd.org. And there are tons of other ones per individual states or regions that have great resources for you. And when we say housing, it's not just housing, because it's part of your budget. That means something that's coming in, something that's going out. There are discounts if you've served and you register on sites like Veteran Tickets. It's vettix.org. It's free tickets. My service dog, I think you see him over here, Colton, he's gone to 17 different concerts. 8th row at Katy Perry and Pink. Don't judge, I have teenage daughters. And the tickets were $200 a piece. I got 4 tickets, $800, cost me $15.95. Paid more for parking. And so again, taking that money, that's your entertainment budget. And so I didn't spend $800 to take 2 teenagers and a friend to go, and another veteran to go see that. I spent less than 20 or 40 bucks. And so now I can transition that somewhere else. Know what's coming in and know what's going out. That way you can be diligent with your budget, whether there's a crisis or not.
And with that, Tim, it's not lost on me and David that you took more than 5 words at the end.
I love hearing Tim personally. I just love working with him. Great job, Tim.
I will wrap it up on behalf of Freddie Mac. Thank you to Easter Seals for this forum. Thank you, Soldier On. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure for me, very educational. And until next time, we wish everyone a belated Veterans Day, and good luck going forward in your homeownership journey.
Excellent. Thanks, Lord. Thanks, David.
Thank you.